Hi there, good noon, and in fact, it's not yet 12, so good morning. So, for a change, I can play around with my greetings depending upon the exact time it is. So, how are you doing? What's up? What's new? What's the latest lowdown? And what is it that you want to talk about today? So what can I really pitch in with, apart from, of course, the topic that you see written here? The topic is critical reasoning, and we specifically want to work on strengthening and weakening the argument. Now, some of you may wonder, and what may you be wondering actually, that the concern could be, why should we study critical reasoning? I mean, I am a CAT aspirant. Why do I really need to go ahead and work on it? CAT does not even ask us very many critical reasoning questions. So, what's the point? So, the point is multifold. Point number one, and perhaps the most important and perhaps the most overlooked thing, is that critical reasoning is the heart of your verbal ability and reading comprehension section. In fact, if I take you through the data from last year, in slot 1, 11 out of 16 questions of RC were based on critical reasoning. Besides, critical reasoning also makes you better at handling questions like para-jumbles and para-completion and paragraph odd one out. So all of those things. So it trains your mind to think in that structured, that objective manner. And then let's not even mention all these other exams: NMAT, ZAT, IIFT. These questions can actually ask you critical reasoning even directly. And therefore, if you're not good at CR, it becomes really very difficult to get an above average score. At BYJU'S, we believe that it is necessary for us to prepare holistically, take care of each area, take care of each issue, so that you go on to excel in whichever exam that you choose to write. And that is why I believe critical reasoning is immensely important for us. So you've already had a session where you went ahead and talked about the basics or looked into the basics, so I'll not go there. I'd specifically focus on the question types. But before we proceed further, let me welcome you to BYJU'S Exam Prep channel that is dedicated to your success. It is really nice to see you turn up here day after day, working with us and increasing your chances of becoming successful at the exam. My name is Vikrant, and I'm going to be your personal coach for all things related to English and communication here at this particular channel. So when we say critical reasoning, hi Nishant, hi Saket, Sonali, good to see you. So we basically talk about certain question types which are important. So it's not an exhaustive list, but if I look at the core questions, you realize we have this question called identify the assumption. Absolutely foundational, fundamental CR question. If you do not master this, you'd actually have issues in a lot of other question types. So this question type may not get asked directly, but it is very useful indirectly in at least 4 other question types that we'd be talking about eventually. Then you have identify the inference. In fact, I know majority of the mistakes that people make in identify the inference questions actually come from their inability to spot assumptions. Then you have strengthening an argument, weakening an argument, identifying the logical flaw. So in each one of the 4, identify the assumption questions are sort of the foundation. So I hope you're working enough on that. And then there are a couple of questions more. So you have resolved the paradox and identify similar or parallel structure arguments. So I'd say 6th off late, if I look at the last 5-6 years, has not played a very dominant role in B school entrance exams, but 7th has somehow become really important for the CAT. So every year we see 2-3 questions that are basically of the 7th type, and if you struggle with that, that can be an issue. So make sure that at least you, so if I remove the sixth question type, the remaining questions are questions that you definitely want to master. And our focus area today is going to be 3 and 4. Hello Sneha, what's up? So let's start with strengthening the argument. So apart from the utility in the exams, I think you already know why this is important. You realize even in our everyday life, we are supposed to persuade people, convince people. And in fact, you will have to do that very soon. Remember, these colleges put you through something called a personal interview. Aren't you convincing the panel members there of your candidature? Aren't you trying to tell them that, oh, you are going to be the best thing since baked bread, or since biryani for us? So you need to persuade people. In order to persuade people, one of the things that you do is you appeal to their reason, which means that you need to create arguments. And if your arguments are not sound, are not strong, your ability to convince them may be a little diminished. And thus, I'd say even in life, this is something that is going to be extremely, extremely critical for us. Okay, so do learn it. Now, how do we know in the exam that we are being asked to strengthen an argument? Let's look at some of the commonly used question stems. So whenever you see this, which one of the following, if true, most strongly supports the argument? Or this one, which one of the following, if true, most strengthens the author's reasoning? Right? So just put this part at the beginning of every question stem. So strengthens. Then look at this, bolsters. Makes the argument more attractive or more convincing. Increases the probability of the conclusion being true. Any of these, all of these are basically different ways of asking us to strengthen the argument, and the IIMs have actually converted this into an art. They've started creating questions like, which of the following, if false, is going to weaken the argument except? So you notice so many twists in the questions, but at the end of the day, it will all boil down to strengthening or weakening, right? So how do we go ahead and strengthen an argument? Any suggestion, any take? What do you think? How can we strengthen an argument? How do we become more persuasive and convincing? Any guesses? And until you are sharing it in the comment box, normally when we try to convince somebody, I'm just sharing that recipe with you. You can appeal to that person's reason, you can appeal to that person's emotion, and you can appeal to that person's character. So this is the holy triad, and within this triad we of course have appealing to reason, where we construct arguments, and how do we strengthen the argument. So here is how I look at this entire process. So visually, I think of an argument as a table. So if you see a table, what do you notice? So every table happens to have a tabletop, and then the tabletop is supported by some legs. So an argument is also more or less similar, where the tabletop can be thought of as the conclusion, and for every conclusion you provide support, right? The support is known as reasons, or if I use the technical word, premises. And if you have gone through a previous session on CR, then you know that some of the premises can be invisible. You may not see them, but they're there. Without them, you could not have created that argument. Those invisible premises, invisible reasons or support items are known as assumptions. So a conclusion rests on these. Now, if I ask you to strengthen a table, let's say I brought a table which is used, which is a little wobbly, a little shaky, how can we go ahead and strengthen it? So you notice we can add more legs to that table, right? We can reinforce the existing legs. So there are times when we put in some extra nails, some extra block of wood to stabilize them further. Or what else can we do? That's basically it, right? Add more legs or reinforce the existing legs. Similarly, if you want to strengthen an argument, what do? Well, you can bring in something that acts as a premise. So it's like adding another leg. Or you can present some evidence that says that, hey, the existing legs are really great. You can support the existing legs. But then there is one extra thing that can be done, and that is state the assumption. Why? Now, assumption is invisible support. So in our mind, when that invisible support is made visible, the impact of the argument is enhanced. So it's like I can come and tell you that, hey, I am really very popular. Usually, I have around 200 people behind me all the time. But you look around and you see nobody. So you'd say, I have a support. I claim I have support, but that support is invisible. You're not going to be impressed. But if you see those 200 odd people with me, most of the times, when that support is made visible, you realize that it becomes impressive. So that's how it works. So in every strengthening the argument question, we are looking for an answer choice that can support the conclusion, or that gives us some more evidence in the form of a fact, a piece of statistics, some example, some empirical evidence, something that supports those premises which are already mentioned. And finally, of course, you can go ahead and state the assumption. So that's how we fix strengthening the argument questions. And then if I take you over to weakening the argument questions, once again, how do we know that we are being asked to weaken? Look at this. Most undermines the argument. Most weakens. Strongest counter to the author's argument. A lot of people look at the strongest and they think that they're supposed to strengthen. Well, that is not true. You're actually supposed to weaken, because the next word is counter. Then casts the most doubt on the reasoning used in the argument. And here is one. Most challenges the argument. And the last one is the most effective rebuttal of the author's argument. So these are some of the popular ways of asking us to weaken. And then, of course, I told you that we have IMs, which ask you stuff like, which of the following, if false, will strengthen. So if false will strengthen, so if it is not false, if it is true, what is it likely to do? Weaken. So you have to engage in those gymnastics of the words created through the question stem in the exam. Right? So whenever you see one of these question types, you are going to use the thought process that I am going to share with you. So once again, we know that an argument is just like a table. How do you weaken a table? Now imagine for a brief while that I brought in a table. You don't like it and you want to prove me wrong. I may think it's an amazing table, but you don't like it. You want to prove me wrong. So what will you do? There are multiple things that you can do. You can break the tabletop, hit the top and break it and say, oh, it's so weak. Or you can break one of the legs and make the table wobbly. Or you can go out, bring in another bigger, more magnificent table, put it next to my table and then say, now this is a table. Yeah, this isn't. This is a poor caricature of a table. Right? So you notice that. So there are multiple ways in which we can prove others wrong. However, not all of these are called weakening. And now listen to me carefully. If anybody breaks the tabletop off, then it basically means that you are stating the opposite of the conclusion. So stating the opposite of the conclusion is called negating an argument. It is not called weakening. If you bring in another table which is more magnificent, well, it may make my table look unattractive, but it does not automatically weaken my table. So that strategy is called building in or bringing in another argument whose conclusion contradicts my argument. But that's it. And then the third strategy is where you break the leg. So breaking the leg is called weakening. So in every weakening the argument question, first and foremost, you need to realize that you need to restrict yourself to the premises and the assumptions. Any answer choice that does not work on these two elements is definitely not going to weaken the argument in the technical sense of the word. So how do we weaken? We again look for an answer choice that brings in some new information that does what? That negates a premise or an assumption, proves a reason wrong, breaks a leg of the table. Or you can also bring in some new information that gives us evidence to doubt the premises or the assumptions that are already involved in that argument. So that's how we really go ahead and do it. So a very, very common trap that the examiner creates for us is he'll negate the conclusion. A lot of people will fall for that. So please make sure that you don't do that. Okay. So now that we have these basics in place, let's go ahead and start working on questions. So you remember, in every critical reasoning question, we typically have a paragraph that supplies some information. Okay. After that paragraph, we happen to have a question stem which tells us what we are supposed to do: strengthen, weaken, infer, what? And then there are these options or answer choices. Okay, so that usually makes these questions fairly long, and as a result I struggle to put it on a single slide. So what I'll do is that I'll give you paragraph and question stem on one slide so that you can read them properly, so that I won't have to make the font size really very small. And then on the next slide I'll repeat the question stem, and then I'll also give you your options. So you need to use your seeker of the YouTube video to refer to the paragraph again in order to answer the question. A little cumbersome, but that's the best that we can do given the space constraints of a single slide. Okay, and in all these questions, normally I insist that reading the question stem should be our first step, because until you do that, how would you know the way in which you should approach the paragraph? How do you know the way in which you're supposed to process that information? Okay, so in today's session, you know that you're going to get strengthening or weakening, and they require similar processes. But when you are looking at a mixed bag test, it's always a good idea to start with the question stem. And I once again say that at least let's stick to the best practices while going through these questions today. Okay, so here is question number 1. And this part is the question stem. So start here and then go to the paragraph. Let's not deviate. And once you are done reading it, let me know and I'll take you over to the answer choices. We done reading? I think I'm cutting off a bit of the bottom. So if you're done reading it, you know how to process it. When it comes to strengthening, we know that we are eventually going to work at the level of premises and assumptions. So after reading the paragraph, you need to have a mental overview of the argument, where you know what the conclusion is, you know what the premise or premises are, and hopefully also the kind of assumption that is required to make it better. Okay. So you have these things in your mind. So here are your options. What would you mark as your answer? Go ahead. Okay. So Nishant, I see that. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our argument and see what is given here. So what is the conclusion in this particular paragraph? It says the basic conclusion here is Dubai's wealth is not built on oil. Right? So somebody pushed Dubai to become a center for global business. The city's planners lived by the credo, if you build it, they will come. So the fundamental key point being made is Dubai's wealth is not built on oil. It is built on other non-oil things. Right? Now let us look at D, since that's the first answer that I've received. It says Dubai wants to be a global leader in business. How does it support the conclusion? How does it tell us that Dubai's wealth is not built on oil but on something else? Is not based on oil but on something else. It's all D says is Dubai wants to be a global leader in business. Okay, you can want to be whatever. You can want to be a unicorn, right? But that does not mean that you are a unicorn. Dubai may want to be a global leader in business. That does not mean that they are. So whether their wealth comes from oil or not, D will have no bearing on it. So we can rule out D. What's your next choice? What's the next option that you would like to pick? Let's look at A. Oil has been a continual source of wealth for Dubai and its neighboring countries. So Dubai and its neighboring countries, if this actually is going to weaken it. It says that, oh, it is actually coming from oil. So that is taken out. B. 60% of Dubai's GDP is dependent on tourism. Now, if 60% of the GDP is coming from a non-oil thing, then this actually goes on to support that their economy is not based on oil. So this can be our answer. Let's look at C. Oil has been a reason for conflicts between many countries. That's irrelevant. Right? It does not even talk about Dubai. It does not talk about whether the economy is based on oil or not. So that's also ruled out. So the best answer choice for us is option B. Joydeep, it wants. That's what I highlighted. It wants. I may, as I said, I want to be a unicorn. Does that mean that I am a unicorn? Dubai wants to be a global business leader. Does that mean that it is a global business leader? No. So, since we do not know that, today their economy is based on oil or not is something that cannot be answered on the basis of D. So that's why we've gone on to rule it out. Okay. So let's move over to the next one and check. Right. Question number 2 on your screen. Once again, start here. Do not abandon good practices. No, Vivek, it's not complicated. It's just that, I'll address this once we are done with the second question. Let's talk about it, okay? So I think by now you've read it. We are supposed to weaken. So the crux is people go to only the popular areas in Maldives. They don't go to offbeat sites. There is a guidebook that encourages you to visit the less well-known sites. And we are supposed to weaken what? Weaken the intended impact of the Maldives guide. Okay. So there are times when we are limited to something specific. So in fact, the crucial part then will be this. There is a guidebook that urges people or encourages them to visit less known spots of Maldives, right? Here are your options. What do you think is going to weaken the impact of that book? Okay, let us see. So Sri. Sri, it actually depends on the question type here. Even in RC, when it comes to reasoning based questions, you go beyond. In RC, we get these strengthening and weakening questions, don't we? And every right answer choice provides you a new piece of information which has to be taken as true. It's only then that you can process and work. Yeah, Tarun, just give me a moment here and then I'll talk about it. Okay, so A, the greatest attraction of Maldives that sets it apart from other places is its beaches. Got anything to do with the Maldives guide? So Maldives guide is good or bad? No impact? Irrelevant. Okay, B, the Maldives guide does not give a detailed account of the location of the lesser known tourist spots of Maldives and Malé. So it does not give you a detailed account, so it reduces the impact. Weakens. C, an increasing number of youngsters are opting for adventure and undiscovered areas. This actually weakens the argument presented on the previous slide, but it has no impact on the Maldives guide specifically, and therefore looking at it from the perspective of that guide, it is irrelevant. And Maldives has many more visitors than just newly married couples. Of course, the entire Bollywood brigade was there, I think, a year ago, but no impact on the guidebook. So that's irrelevant, and therefore the correct answer is option B. Okay, now two things. There was a question that was raised a little while ago where somebody said, who was it? Somebody said that the previous question was complicated. Yeah, complicated and non-complicated are highly subjective. You realize in an exam, easy and difficult is subjective. If you know how to solve it, it is easy. If you do not know how to solve it, you may call it difficult. So I happen to have a slightly different definition of easy and difficult. So for me, easy things are things that are completely in my control. Difficult things are things which are not completely in my control. Okay, so going by that definition, I find CR easy. You may not be comfortable with CR today, but it is easy because it all depends on your effort. So see, today the probability is that if the level of the question is here and your level is here, you'd find it difficult. But if you work and reach the level of the question, then the question will become easy. But then you work and increase your level even further, then the question will become a child's play. It will be fun for you. So please work, and I'm sure you'll reach there. Then the other thing was from Tarun, if you build it, they will come. Okay, so if you build it, they will come is an ideology. So basically they said that, okay, just to take you in fact back to this so that we can talk about it. Dubai is favorable in a favorable geographic position, pro-market orientation. Cities planners lived by the credo, if you build it, they will come. So they're like, okay, we may not have very many facilities today, but we want to establish ourselves as a business hub, a center for global business. So let us give them the infrastructure facilities. If you want to be a center for business hub, you need to have office space. You need to have conventions, you need to have hotels. So their credo, their motto, their belief was, if we build all of these things, people will come to us because we have a favorable geographical position and pro-market orientation. In fact, I know of quite a few people who shifted to Dubai or who operate from Dubai because of some of these positive factors. Right? So that takes care of the issues in the first two questions. Let's dive into the third one. What's your take here? Done? And tell me, did you start with the question stem? Good practices? Sri, maybe. But in case you're planning to go there, do let me know. I need to get a couple of bottles of perfume. Shameless plug for my personal quest. Okay, so here are your options. Virender, that was irrelevant to the guidebook. It in fact weakened the overall argument, which lamented the fact that people do not go to the less known areas. He says that among youngsters the trend is the opposite. Oh, that was a long. That sounds like another lifetime now, huh? So, ready? Okay, so let us go ahead and look at it. So what is the argument all about? I think the conclusion is clear. The conclusion here is it is wrong to say that unionism helps in increasing wages. So saying, hey, unionism does not help in increasing the wages of the workers. On what basis are we saying it? So workers who are part of worker unions earn more than those who are not part of unions. But then it goes on to say that members of the workers unions generally work in industries and companies where the pay is good. And in these companies, even those who are not members will have comparable wages. So there is an evidence that says that, okay, workers who are part of union earn more. But then he says that, hey, come on, workers who are part of a union work in those industries where the pay is good. And in those industries, even those who are not a part of the unions, even they have similar wages. So to say that unions help you earn more is actually not right. Now we want to weaken it. And if you weaken it, what is the impact going to be? We'll say that, oh, unions actually help with the wages, right? So let us check. A, unions give workers many benefits beside pay. Now the argument is all about wages, that is pay. So anything that goes beyond pay will be irrelevant. So A is irrelevant. B is also irrelevant because it talks about belonging and community and not wages. How about C? The wages of workers vary and depend on the industry and skill among other factors. Okay, so if C is true, unions help with the wages or not? We don't know it, right? So irrelevant. D, non-members of a union in an industry receive wage increases at par with members as a result of the efforts of the union. Now D says that, hey, non-members earn similar wages, but that is because the union members fought for a higher wage. Because of their fight, the wage was higher and even the non-members benefited. So even though non-members earn the same amount of money, it does not mean that unions did not help with the wages of a worker. They did, right? And that is why D is the only one that can weaken this particular argument and should be our answer. A, B and C have no bearing on the conclusion whatsoever. Okay, so D it is. Some work to do, guys, some work to do. Okay, the next one. So a bike rider says something which is on the screen, but you know the starting point, question stem, good practices. Read it? Move on. Okay, so here is the question, or here are the options because you already know the question. Look at it carefully. Okay, so I have 3-4 answers. Let's start working. So look at the argument. Bike rider says free society. If I am taking a risk, why should others bother? So let me decide whether I want to wear a helmet or not. Okay, because even if I fall, what happens? I harm myself, right? This says I do not cause inconvenience or harm to others, and we want to weaken it. So let us see. So what's the core? Let me decide whether to wear helmet or not, or in other words, wearing of a helmet should not be mandatory. Why? It's a free society. If I am taking a risk and I'm not harming others, why would you have a problem? Okay, so let's look at A. Irrelevant. That's why I think most of you have eliminated it. B. It has been the law to wear helmets for two-wheelers and seat belts for four-wheelers as a precautionary measure. Okay, but then does it weaken his stance? Does it tell the person that, hey, no, it should not be your choice? B states the opposite of the conclusion. Does it give you the opposite of any premise or assumption? Remember, weakening has to be done at the level of premises or assumptions. So because it is not working at that level, we can rule out B. C. Insurance rates for all bike riders would shoot up to pay for the accidents and injuries of riders without helmets. Now you know how insurance works, right? Insurance is pooling of the risks. So will you have an accident this year? We don't know that, but we do know that around, let us say, we do know that around 0.5% of the bike riders meet an accident any given year. Will you be one of those 0.5%? We don't know. You may not. You may not be. So what happens is that all the bike riders, 100% of them, they will buy insurance. When you buy insurance, you are supposed to pay something called a premium, right, to cover the risk. So what basically happens is that insurance company compensates those people who meet with an accident using the money collected through the premium. Now, if the insurance company has to pay 1,000 rupees a year, then they will have to charge premium that totals to 1,000 rupees, right? So let's say there are only 1,000 riders, and out of these 1,000 riders, we know that only 20 in any given year meet with an accident, and when they meet with an accident, each of them needs to be paid around 500 rupees. So the total is 10,000. So the insurance company needs to pay 10,000 rupees every year, which means that they can charge everybody 10 rupees. Okay, but what if there are some people who say that, yeah, let me be free, I will ride without a helmet. Now if that person meets with an accident, his injuries are likely to be more extensive, leading to a higher payout for his recovery, his hospitalization, etc. So in that case, this 10,000 can become 12,000, which means that instead of 10 rupees, everybody will have to pay 12 rupees. So his decision of wearing a helmet, which he says does not harm others or cause inconvenience to others, is wrong. His decision is going to harm others in the form of higher payout for insurance. So C negates the premise. C says that, hey, when you say it won't harm others, you're wrong, because see, they can get harmed. Okay, then D, fatalities due to head injuries are the highest among bike riders. But okay, that's true, but does it weaken this particular argument? Does it negate any premise or assumption? It does not. So even D can be ruled out, and therefore C is going to be our best answer to this particular question. So I hope that I've given you a window into the world of strengthening and weakening questions. You can, of course, join BYJU'S exam prep, where you can get to practice more of these questions. In case you are preparing on your own, please make sure that you solve these questions on priority before you start taking RC more seriously. And here is a thought for you. It's only when we take chances when our lives improve. The initial and the most difficult risk that we need to take is to become honest. This hits really close to my heart. You need to have a high degree of self-awareness if you want to become a remarkably better version of yourselves. So please make sure that you are ruthlessly honest with you, and that you do take chances, that you do strive to become better continuously. And if you like this session, please make sure that you hit the like button, and don't forget to share the video and subscribe to our channel. Okay, and here are a couple of things that I want to know. People who got great results through our full-time program, you can also benefit by being a part of this program. And to make it easy, we have a scholarship test on 28th of May, and using that you can shave off up to 90% of the course fees. That's amazing, right? Then here is another session that is going to be organized on 30th of May. You need to register for it. If the topic appeals to you, and I believe anybody who's not started taking the preparation seriously yet, this is a session that you would like to certainly attend. Additionally, for more practice, head over to BYJU'S Exam Prep app, where we upload a new section quiz every day to ensure that your preparation does not slack off at all. And make sure that you also attend our series called 500 Most Expected CAT Questions that happens every day. Right? And you do learn something or the other from one section or the other of the CAT paper. So that's it from me today. I look forward to meeting you guys once again really soon. Until then, stay safe, stay focused, stay in touch. Have a great day ahead. Take care.